But as soon as I opened the door, I could just feel evil.
Mhm.
I would have been less scared of someone with a knife standing there because at least I would have been something I could grapple with. But my daughter screaming at me, moving again, and as I went towards her room through our living room, I saw a one-dimensional rectangle on the wall. It was black and it was moving kind of like an old overhead projector when you're a
Hello, hello, and welcome to the Braided Faith podcast. We have a wonderful guest today, Robyn Pratt. I'm so excited for you guys to meet her. She wrote an outstanding book that I had the privilege of reading, and we'll share with you how you get the opportunity to read that too at the end. But for now, I just want to introduce my new friend, Robyn. Welcome to the show, Robyn.
Oh, thank you, Crystal. I'm so excited to be here.
You're so welcome. I'm glad to have you here too. So, Robyn, we're just going to dive right in. Feel free to share a little bit about yourself. I know that you wrote, obviously, I just mentioned your book. Now, before we get started, is that your first book that you wrote?
Yes, and currently it's my only book.
Okay, well, I see another book, hopefully. Well, just share a little bit about yourself, Robyn. Introduce yourself to us.
Right. I grew up in southern Indiana near Bloomington, where IU is having a good football season for once this year.
Nice.
And I currently live in northern Indiana, up near Lake Michigan, with my husband and our two teenage daughters. And my husband and I spent 6 years with Mission Aviation Fellowship in Indonesia. And we've been back since 2012, and I've held position of assistant women's ministry director at our church and just switched over to early childhood coordinator. So I'm having fun,
Nice.
just having joy with kids again.
Aw. Awesome. I love that. Well, so I think one of the greatest things is giving of your time. And I know so much goes into missionary work. So I would love to talk about what inspired you guys to move forward in that. And yeah, let's start there. What inspired that?
I was all settled in my college and ready to get going my freshman year, and I felt God telling me there was something else. And I resisted because I had just gotten settled. And I resisted for 6 weeks until I drove home for fall break and totaled my car. And God finally had my attention. And I said, "Why?" And He said, "I want you to serve as a missionary."
Mm.
And I said, "Okay, I don't think you designed me to go alone." And He said, "You won't." And that was all the direction I got for the next 2 years until
Wow.
I met my husband, who was preparing for a career with mission aviation. And that just was the last piece of the puzzle.
Wow, that's amazing. So share with us because we're, as women, we'll feel that tug of God speaking to us or some kind of direction, I guess you could say, and then it takes forever. So what was that waiting like, and how did you stay patient in that waiting once he finally told you what he needed from you?
I very uncharacteristically, I didn't stress over the details, which I knew it was God because my natural tendency is to stress over the details and to need it all laid out in a 10-step plan.
Yep.
But I knew I was majoring in early childhood education, and I didn't feel like he was asking me to change that or change where I went to college. And so I just did what I could preparation wise and waited. And it was all him because it wasn't me.
I love that, which that makes sense. And maybe that's the key to it is just trusting him. I mean, it sounded like you had so much trust in him that it was no problem waiting. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. So, at what point did you feel? Because you guys were in Indonesia for a while, right?
Yeah, we were there for 6 years.
Wow. At what point did you feel the desire to write a book?
That didn't come until after we had returned to the States.
Nice.
It started as a list of everything that had gone wrong, of all the hard things. We came back for debriefing to a couple we had never met before. And I said, well, how are they going to help us debrief? They don't know who we are. So I wrote a list of all the things. And over the next several years, this is actually a 12-year process.
Wow.
I took that list and talked to God about each item. And he showed me how he provided and where he was in each of those stories. And he was right. And I could finally see it. And
Wow.
so I wrote it. And then I felt his conviction just to share what he had done, just our testimonies, our stories, our faith adventures. And so I did.
Wow. So I did have a specific question that is immediately when I got to this part of reading your book, I wanted to ask you is when you had first talked about the different religion of being in missions, and I think it was, I'm pretty sure it's been a few weeks since I read your book. I'm pretty sure it was in Indonesia, right? Because you guys have correct me if I'm wrong. I'm so sorry. Did you guys do another place too that you did missionary work?
We had not, we were at language school for a year, which
Okay.
was a Muslim community.
Yeah.
And then on the field where we spent the next 5 years was mostly animism.
Okay. So I think that's where my brain was thinking y'all had gone to two different places. So when it when it came to the Muslim religion, how did you navigate through that with your walk with Christ and I know that Muslims, there's a place for Jesus in their religion. I do understand that. But how did you navigate through that as you lived with them?
It was definitely a challenge. As a girl in Southern Indiana, there's not a lot of a variety of cultures
Yeah.
there. The biggest thing that helped before we left to go overseas, we had a chance to attend a mosque in the States with a Muslim couple. And so it was nice to have that experience at home before
Mm.
everything was new. And it still felt like a completely different world, but we knew we were still in our home county. So
Yeah.
it helped. And when we got to Indonesia, we did not know a single word of the Indonesian language, which means you have to be quiet and you can't
Mhm.
talk,
Yeah.
which is helpful because you don't say things that it shouldn't have said when
That's
you're learning.
a good point.
And
Yeah.
so you just kind of take it all in. And by the time you can say a complete sentence, you've learned a lot. So that helps.
Well, see, God knows what we need when we need
Yes.
it.
Yes.
Wow. I don't know, just I feel like I have so many questions, but I don't know how to bring them to the forefront and articulate those questions. But just share with us, because I'll be honest, I haven't had many people as a guest on the show that have done any kind of missionary work. I know some of them have, but that hasn't been anything we've talked about a whole lot. So I would love for you to just share. And I know that your book shares a lot of it. And so, absolutely, if anybody's interested, we'll have all of that information in the show notes. Maybe just share with us some of the amazing things that you even just learned about yourself or share one way that you really saw God in this because I know a lot of people that want to do mission work, but there's a fear there. And so maybe speak to that person.
Okay. I would say I learned, in some ways, I learned I had nothing to give, and I was totally reliant on God. But He uses skills that we don't even think of as skills at the same time. When we first got to the field, there were some high school age gals at the top of the street that came to visit, and they wanted to learn English, but they weren't interested in reading a book or cooking. And I couldn't find a way. We had to speak English about something. And so one of them saw my cross stitch project and said, "Oh, can we do this?" Oh, well, yeah, we can. So I emailed some ladies at my church back home, and they sent me a bunch of dish towels that you could cross stitch a little band on. And then we sat down and picked out a pattern, and they cross stitched, and we just talked. And there were so many instances like that where things that I didn't think of as a skill that God used. God is just God, and there's always a way.
I love that because I think what people need to understand that is that God is weaving the story. He's going to use everything that he knows, that creative things, that gifts that we have that we can share with others. And I feel like right now the theme as we're talking is trust. Just trusting God. If he has called you to do something, anything, trust him. Trust that he's going to fill in the missing pieces. He's going to, I don't, one thing I've learned is he does not, it's always out of what I imagined it would be. He never goes by my plan. And that's actually so beautiful because it's allowed me to trust him a little bit more. And it sounds like that's a lot of what you guys experienced on y'all's journey. So I love that. Thank you for sharing. I mean, is there anything else that you want to share about your mission work, or anything you feel would be something good to let our listeners hear?
Well, I could share my favorite story out of all the
Yes,
stories.
please.
So we had two daughters at this time. Our oldest was two, and our youngest was 4 months old. And I had just nursed our youngest about half an hour before I heard our oldest daughter screaming in the middle of the night. And I wasn't thinking very maternal thoughts as I got out of bed and went to the door. But as soon as I opened the door, I could just feel evil.
Mhm.
I would have been less scared of someone with a knife standing there because at least I would have been something I could grapple with.
Right.
But my daughter screaming got me moving again. And as I went towards her room through our living room, I saw a one-dimensional rectangle on the wall. It was black and it was moving kind of like an old overhead projector when you're adjusting it and the page moves. And my daughter's screams got me moving again. And I opened her door, and she was in her back corner on her bed as far away as she could get from the living room. And she said, "Mommy, my songs, my songs." And she never asked for her songs because they're the last thing we do before bedtime. And she doesn't like to miss anything.
Mm.
But the first song we always sing is "Jesus Loves Me." And the first word is Jesus. And as soon as I sing that word, it was gone. The presence. It wasn't gradual. It wasn't a little bit. It was complete and instant. And still not really knowing what to do, I finished the song. And about halfway through, my daughter laid back down and fell asleep.
Wow.
And at that point, my brain finally got moving. And I remembered my spiritual warfare training, which is just simply to invoke the power of the name of Jesus to
Mm.
get rid of the evil presence. And so I prayed out loud in my daughter's room, and I prayed out loud in the living room. And then I went into my other daughter's room and prayed out loud and back in the living room. And then the song Strong Tower, the righteous run into it and they are safe, was running through my head, and I felt complete peace and just went back to bed. And of course, the next morning, wow, what on earth happened last night?
Did you ever
It was
find out what was going on, or hear of other stories?
We did finally. I talked to a Wycliffe missionary in town, and she said to figure out if someone had given us a gift or if we'd had a visitor. And we couldn't come up with anything until a week later, a vision trip student that had stayed with us sent us copies of the photos she had taken. And in one of the photos, my daughter, the one who had been awake, she was touching a rectangle in a graveyard in a village that she had gone to. I hadn't gone on the trip, I had stayed home with our youngest. And in this village, they bury their dead in their bones in rectangular boxes and put them up on stilts. And as soon as I saw that rectangle, I knew that that was that rectangle. And I showed our house helper, and she wouldn't touch the photograph. And when I shared the story, she said, well, of course, that's what happened. And then she wanted to know who let Samantha do that. And I was glad that it wasn't me. She was not happy about that whole situation. But that, yeah, that was, and it
Wow.
never came back. We never had an experience like that again. But the God of the universe used our goofy little nighttime routines so that the first word out of my mouth was the name of Jesus. And
Mm.
again, like you said, just trust and protection. And God was just, He was in it all the whole 6 years we were there.
Wow, that's amazing. It's amazing that people don't understand how the power of even just a picture or a t-shirt. I actually just finished telling my husband a story about when I was younger, and I won't go into full detail of the story, but it was a concert t-shirt that one of my uncles had brought to my sister, and it's just that evening I had a nightmare where like the next day we found little trinkets that it was not a nightmare, but it was the same vision of what was on this t-shirt. That has stuck with me for the rest. I mean, I was a little girl, but that has just stuck with me and made me realize there is power in these things because we just don't know what, I mean, it's a spiritual battle. So that is crazy. So did did you got was there a lot of that over there in Indonesia? A lot of I don't want to call that witchcraft. I don't know what that was, but was there a lot of those things that maybe brought on some of those spiritual bad feelings at times?
Yes, there were people there would see a lot of things. There was one road out of town where people would see lights at night where there weren't any lights. There was another instance where we were visiting a Hindu temple in town with another visitor, and my oldest daughter was maybe 6 months old at the time, and then I was carrying her in a front carrier. And I just felt this, it was almost like a hot air balloon in front of me, but I couldn't see it. And it didn't allow me to go any closer to the temple. And I visited this temple before, but not with my daughter. And I think God was just saying, no, she doesn't know me yet. You're not to take her any closer. And so after trying several times, because I'm a slow learner, I went back to the car and let them visit the temple and talk to God about what was going on. But the animism religion is just it's so heartbreaking. They believe everything has either a good spirit or an evil spirit. And so the good spirits are already good. You don't have to worry about them. So you basically bribe the evil spirits to leave you alone. And so there's a lot of just trying to connect with evil spirits, which
Hmm.
results in giving them power and mobility. They're
Mm, yeah. So were you guys able to bring people to Christ and to the Christian faith? Was that something you guys saw quite a bit?
My husband did one man that worked at the airplane hangar for them did come to faith out of the Muslim faith. Mission Aviation Fellowship is a little different in that we're a support ministry. We're not really the pastors
Mm,
or the translators or the evangelists, although we are in our neighborhoods and our everyday lives. We are.
mm-hmm.
But my husband did a lot of medical flights and a lot of transporting church workers around the island, and then just some general transportation to fund the medical flights and the other flights.
Nice, nice. Yeah, so and I did catch that in your book that there was a little bit of difference in what you guys were there for. I know that God still just worked amazing things though. So the title of your book, speaking of the aviation, is On a Wing and a Prayer: Growing Your Faith Through Life's Adventures. Share with share with us what it was like to dig back into that journey of being on your mission work, and how did that weave into your current life and where you got to writing the book, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, like I said, it started out as the list of everything that went wrong. And then
Yeah.
it was probably a couple years before time and space helped to kind of for perspective. And then I really started working on it and I started a blog, and it was more for me just to process with God than anything else. And it got to the point where I think I had 60 stories. And then I was able, through my job at our church, to go to a reading and writing conference, more for speaking really than writing. But God just has a way of kind of circling back. In elementary school, I had loved to write, but then at our school, drawing and writing got connected, and I cannot draw anything. So I kind of put
I
the
can't either.
writing on pause for, well, yeah, what, 30 years, something like that. But so it started out as just processing, like I said, seeing where God was and how he had protected and cared and loved for us, and just sharing, starting to share with others, just, hey, here's what God did and what is he doing for you? And yeah, you can trust him to do hard things because he's there. And I just finally kind of felt God saying, all right, now we're gonna share. And so I did tried to do the whole process of talking to publishers, and it wasn't happening, but God was still saying it was time. So we actually got an inheritance unexpectedly. And we just felt like, all right, this is the time to do this. So I used a publishing house. It's self-published, but I wasn't brave enough to do it without some guidance. So,
I hear ya.
so this company helps you through the process.
Nice. Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And then my husband is in law enforcement now. And it's to the other half of your question about how has that influenced me going forward. I definitely don't think I could have done the law enforcement wife thing without seeing God on the mission field and having to trust him with everything. We had sicknesses, we just so many things. And I don't think I could have done this life without having done that beforehand. God is the gracious God that leads us by the hand.
Yeah, he really is. And that makes sense. I mean, when you have gone to great lengths to be obedient to him and you just see his hand working in even the scary times, like that triangle in your daughter's room. I mean, it's sometimes he just awes me with even just listening to your story. I'm literally seeing him in just all of these steps and ways throughout your life. And that's inspiring to me because as humans and as Christians, sometimes we have those moments where it's like, God, are you really here? We start to have these questions, we're feeling anxiety or whatever it is. that we might be going through in life. And so thank you for sharing this because especially during the holiday seasons and we're going into a new year and people have goals and it's just sometimes we need that reminder and we need that inspiration that God really is, he weaves himself in all of the details of our lives. He has already ordered our steps and it's so thank you for sharing that. I'm listening and I'm just feeling like, wow, he has really been there like through everything for you, and it's beautiful. Okay, so what's next for Robyn? You have the book. You said you had gone in to talk to with speaking. Is that something that you're currently doing or want to do? Where are you now?
Yeah, I've done some things at our church with our women's Bible study, but nothing on a professional level at all first. But I've learned to kind of never say never. I think through my role at my church, I public speaking will never be my favorite thing.
I don't think it's
But
anybody's favorite thing.
but it's much less terrifying than it used to be. And I think just knowing that we have stories and they're our stories, I think helps so much. When we first started fundraising, we were sharing other people's stories or what we thought our life might be like. And it's just so much easier when it's your story.
Yeah.
So I have no idea what God has next. I feel like he's doing something right now. It definitely, there was kind of about a year where we were just kind of settled, and now it feels like he's working again. So I am gearing up and looking for where he's going.
Yeah, well, he already knows. That's sometimes
Yeah.
you're like, God, just tell me so I can be prepared. And he's like, no, that's the problem is you're going to
Uh,
get yourself prepared in the wrong way.
great.
Well, and how about your husband? Is he, so you said he's in law enforcement now. Is how like what is he doing? Is he involved anymore in mission work or aviation or any of that stuff? Or is he kind of like, I'm good. This is what I'm doing now. This is what God's called me. Because that's mission work in itself. I mean, God bless him. It's hard. So where is he now with everything?
Yeah, he just actually about a month ago renewed his pilot's license. And he's been in law enforcement now for 12 years. And
Oh,
he feels God kind of moving in his life too, and kind of trying to figure out what that next step is. But right now he's been a road troop with our state police,
nice.
and he worked at our county jail for a couple years before that. And he's had a canine now for 8 years. And he's moved into helping with training for other canine officers. So,
Wow.
yeah, it is. And you're right. It is definitely a mission field, both with his coworkers and with everyone he interacts with. And he is the oldest of three brothers. So he has his biggest thing he does is probably his big brother talk, where people have made a series of less than great decisions, but they're still wanting to have a future. And so that's when he pulls out his big brother talk, like, hey, come on, this isn't gonna get you where you want to go.
Mm.
And he just has a way of talking to people that is just beautiful. And people listen because he's there doing it with them. And
Mhm.
so he's gained credibility in that world and the ability to speak to hard things in that world.
And my guess is he probably doesn't necessarily feel comfortable public speaking or things like that.
Right, right. Yeah. No,
And I
he
say
loves the
that,
one-on-one. Yeah.
yeah, I say that because my husband's the exact same way. He does so well. He gets asked to go and speak at events and stuff, and I don't want to say he hates it because that's a very strong word, but he does
Right.
not enjoy it. And it's so hard for me to see him disliking it so much because it's just what God's called him to do. People will ask him, "Will you officiate our wedding?" And he'll do it. He's an officiant, but it's just like the hardest thing. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, honey. I think this is what God's called you to do, though.
Uh-huh.
That's funny. Well, Robyn, I don't want to keep you much longer, but it's been a joy to talk to you. Is there, I mean, if you have any amazing stories or anything else you want to share, I mean, I feel like I'm putting you on the spot right now. But is there any last thing that you would love to talk to us about or say to us or share with us?
I would just encourage all of you to, I mean, my husband and I are nothing special. We just said yes when God said go. And so I would just encourage you that he will meet you there. He will go ahead and before you, and he will teach you everything. I don't know that I accomplished anything in the field, but I know what I learned. I learned so much about him, and it has changed the way I see everything, has changed the way I parent, it's changed our marriage. And I've learned to look for him now instead of waiting 2 years to see him in the hard things. I've learned to not necessarily to be excited, but I think to be expectant, to know that he's going to show up and he's going to do something wild. And my favorite saying is to live in a way that doesn't make sense without the gospel, because that is what gets people's attention. And it's so much more effective to talk to others when they come to you and they ask, what in the world are you doing? We did foster care. We did several things where people who asked, what on earth? And then they are listening, at least for a little while, because they came to you.
Mhm.
And instead of trying to run after them and talk to them. So I would just encourage you that His mission fields are everywhere, and just whatever you feel God calling you and whatever gifts you don't think you have, feel like cross stitching. He can use everything, and He's so gracious. He's a good God.
Yeah, he is. I had a couple of things I wanted to respond with. Is number one, I guarantee there was change, there was something you did over there, and you might not ever know about it. And number two, if for some reason it was only so you could be a better parent and a better wife, I mean, the biggest, and I say this all the time, the biggest mission work that we can ever do is within our four walls. I mean, it truly is. I mean, you have been raising humans that are going to go out into this world and do something. And as parents, we have to really guide that to be something good and not something hurtful or hard or bad. So again, I go back to number one. There are probably things you don't know that you did over there that were powerful and meaningful and life changing for someone. What you did, what God did for you within your four walls. So it's been such a joy to talk to you. So I asked this question to all of my guests is my theme here is helping women balance tradition in an untraditional world. So I would love to hear from you. What does tradition mean to you, and what would be your input in that helping balance tradition in this untraditional world?
Yeah, that's a great question. And going to another culture helps you to see your culture more clearly. And you why do we just do things the way we do? So when we were parenting our girls were little, just even decisions about whether they sleep in a crib in the Indonesian culture, everything was just kind of a bigger decision. Things that I wouldn't have thought twice about here were a consideration there. So just finding that balance and talking to God about it and whatever he feels he tells you is the right balance, I think, for each kid, even within a family, it's gonna be different. In spite of all the adventures I've had, I am a traditional gal, I think.
I
I
can
like
see
to
that.
I like to sew and cross stitch and all those things. I love the Little House books and those stories. I was a stay-at-home mom for 10 years before, and I still only work part-time because that is as much as I can handle right now
Mhm.
in our lives. But I love being a mom first and foremost. Since I was in first grade and they asked what we wanted to be when we grew up, I said mom, and I was really confused that all the other girls didn't say mom too. My mom had to explain to me that they also want to be moms, probably. They just also want to be these other things too. And I still didn't get it, but that's okay.
I'm right there with you. I tell my husband that too. I was meant to be a mom. Like I don't know what to say. And we don't have children yet. We've had multiple losses, but we're getting ready to adopt
Oh,
and it's just that thing. It's like I was meant to mother. I had a friend reach out to me not too long ago who had no idea we had started the journey of adoption, but she just said she woke up in the middle of the night and very clearly heard God say, Cryssie will be a mother to the motherless. And that I was like, oh my gosh. And then
beautiful.
I shared with her, like, we're actually right smack dab in the middle of being able to adopt. And hopefully by the beginning of the year, we'll be fully ready. But anyway, I feel ya. I feel ya. I'm still kind of like, I don't understand how you wanted to be a lawyer, like, or a teacher. Like, did you want to be
Oh,
just a mom?
right.
I'm right there with you. Well, it was such a joy to talk to you, Robyn. I would love to have you back on. And again, I feel like I'm putting you on the spot yet again. Apparently, I'm good at that. Um, but I'm going to be starting a another podcast, and I'm not sure what those details are going to look like, but it's going to be a lot about launching a book and just walking with an author through that experience of what that was like. And so I would love, if you're open to it, I would love to have you as a guest on that, just to
Yeah.
go in a little bit more with that experience of your book, because today I just wanted to hear your heart with about Jesus and God and your experience. But if you're open to that, I would love to have you on that show.
Yeah, that'd be great, Crystal.
Awesome. We'll be in contact about
Okay,
that.
sounds
So,
good.
Robyn, how can people reach out to you if they want to follow your journey or see what's next? How can we reach out to you?
Yeah, well, I can show you my book.
Yeah.
So it is available on Amazon, Kindle paperback or hardback. And then I don't know if you can see how to spell my name on there, but it's spelled with a Y. So my website is robynprattauthor.com.
Okay.
And my email is prattrobyn@yahoo.com. And then Facebook is Robyn Ball, Ball Pratt. So any of those ways work.
Perfect. And we are going to have all of those links in the show notes for anybody that wants to just reach out to her, go read her book, y'all. It's very inspiring. So thank you so much, Robyn. You're such a
You?
jewel. It's been such a blessing to talk to you. I can't wait for to hear more from you, and hopefully there's another book in the works. Just saying. Well, thank
Sounds
you.
great, Crystal.
Thank you all for listening. We're so thankful for you, and we will see you on the next episode.